Alright, good morning. This is Miss Beard doing the challah demonstration. Alright, so moving on to number 3. There are 3 main rules of eating kosher, okay? The first rule of eating kosher is that they do not mix milk and meat together, or any type of dairy and meat together, okay? And kosher is simply a way of eating for the Jewish people. It's a set of dietary laws that they follow. Okay, it's spelled out in the Torah, which is their book of beliefs. And so the first one is that they do not mix meat and dairy together, meaning that something like a cheeseburger is something that they simply do not eat. Okay, they would never mix meat and dairy together. In fact, some kosher people are so strict on that rule that they have separate plates for things that they eat dairy products on, and separate plates that they for their meat products. Okay. The second rule is that they do not eat pork. Okay, they do not eat swine. And is considered to be unclean and therefore not eatable, okay, or edible. It has something to do with the fact that they eat their cud and their hooves. And the people who do Judaism are going to do a little bit more research on that. But they do not eat pork. That means no sausage, no pork chops, no any type of pork products, okay? The last one is that they do not eat any shellfish, okay, which includes lobster, clams, crabs, shrimp. Okay, those are all considered shellfish, and they do not eat shellfish. Okay? Okay, so the bread that we're going to be making today is called challah. And I'm actually going to start backwards on it, and it has been able to rise for the past just about 30 minutes. Okay? And I'm going to braid the bread and put it in the oven so that you can get to try a sample of it today. Okay, and I already have my oven preheated. So I'm going to take my bread out. It's been rising already. It's about doubled in size. And I'm going to break it into 3 small segments. Okay, it's a little sticky, so I'm going to put a little bit of flour down. Quinzella, would you mind grabbing the flour for me, please? It's a little sticky, so I'm going to just put a little bit of flour down so it doesn't stick. Okay? And I'm going to actually roll these into 3 braids. Okay, kind of punch it down a little bit. And I'm going to roll it into 3 separate braids, and I'm actually going to braid them together. Okay? So I'm going to roll it out just kind of like you would roll out a pretzel. And I'm going to show you how we make this dough. I'm going to kind of work backwards for this demonstration. Okay, so we've got 1 long strand. I'm going to put this on my cookie sheet. The second one, again, I'm going to roll out like a pretzel. Third one, same process. Okay, and this creates a long loaf of bread. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pinch it at the ends. Okay, and then I'm going to braid it. Very similar to the way that you braid hair, actually. And I'm going to pinch it and kind of tuck it in at the end. Okay. And before I put this bread in the oven, I'm going to give it an egg wash coat. Okay, what an egg wash coat is, this is just an egg yolk with cold water added to it. And I'm going to brush it on top of the bread. And this is going to give the bread a nice golden color. It's going to be nice and shiny, which is what you want out of a bread like challah. Okay. After I put this in the oven, we're going to let it cook for about 20 minutes, and then we are going to make the dough, so you can see how to make the dough as well. Okay, I want to give it a nice even coat. You should use about 1 whole egg yolk for this part. Okay, right before I stick it in the oven, I'm also going to put a little bit of kosher salt on top of it. Okay, kosher salt is simply salt that is kosher to eat, meaning it's been blessed by a rabbi, which is the kind of the Jewish equivalent of a priest. All right, I'm going to put this in the oven for about 25 minutes. So, Deja, will you tell me when it's 9:50, please? Okay, and then we are going to start on our dough here, okay? So we're going to work backwards. Why would I maybe make the dough first and then grate it for you? Why, thinking of our class period, why would it be necessary for me to do that?
So
How long
you
does
can have it prepared before class in?
How long do you think the dough takes to rise?
Forever.
Not forever.
I don't know.
About between 30 minutes and an hour, yeah. It needs to double in size. So you need to give the yeast time to rise, otherwise the dough won't rise. Okay? So I'm going to measure out in 1 1/4 cup of flour, okay, to start off our dough here. Okay? Next I'm going to add 2 tablespoons, and we'll add more flour as we make the dough. Okay? Next I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar. And this does not make the bread sweet, but it kind of takes away any bitter taste that there may be. And 1 1/2 teaspoons of regular salt. Okay, I'm going to measure it over a measuring cup so I don't get salt everywhere. This is a 1/2 teaspoon, so I'm going to do this one 3 times. And I'm also going to add 1 package of active dry yeast. Okay, I don't have a package, so if you run out of yeast, a package of yeast you can substitute by using a jar of yeast. It's 2 1/2 teaspoons is the equivalent. 1. Okay, and remember, yeast is a living organism. So that would be great. Glad I caught that. 2 1/2. Okay. Okay. Next, I'm going to cut in some butter with a pastry blender. There, this is actually margarine. Okay, and this tool allows me, can you see this? Okay, this tool allows me to break the margarine into smaller pieces. Okay, so that all the flour granules can surround it, and this gives the bread a flaky texture. Okay, once you've broken the bread into smaller, or the butter into smaller pieces, you can go ahead and start to use your Kitchenaid. Okay, this is called a Kitchenaid Mixer, and this particular type of mixer is really great for making doughs because it has a lot of power, and it has the ability to mix and kind of knead the dough as well. If you cook a lot, this is an investment that you'll want to make. These run about $300, so they're very pricey. But they also come with really neat attachments. You can grind your own meat, make ice cream, roll pasta. You can do just about anything with a Kitchenaid, it seems like. I got one about a year ago, and I love it. I feel like I'm doing a Kitchenaid commercial. I promise I'm not. Okay. They're not paying me, I promise. You see that? Okay. So we have so far our flour, our sugar, our salt, and our butter, and our yeast. So I'm going to add to that 1 cup of warm water. And I had a thermometer in it earlier. It needs to be about 120 degrees, which is very warm. It should not be hot, hot, hot. Why should it not be scalding? It'll kill the yeast, okay? Remember, yeast is a living organism. And if you put really hot water with it, it's going to scare it and it's going to kill it. Okay. Alright, so while this is blending together, I'm going to crack our eggs. We're going to add 2 whole eggs and 1 egg white to this mixture. I'm going to crack them in this custard cup first. Okay, I'm going to add our 2 whole eggs one at a time to let it incorporate. Our third egg, I'm going to simply separate it, and I'm only going to add the egg white to our mixture. The egg yolk, remember when I brushed some of it on top of the bread? We're going to save that for the top of the bread. So to separate an egg white from an egg yolk, you need to crack down the middle, okay? So you can either crack it toughly, or I like to just take my thumb and lightly break it. Okay, break it apart and go back and forth with the egg, okay? Your yolk, try to keep it separated and it will naturally separate. There are some kitchen tools that will do this step for you, but it's pretty simple to do on your own, okay? And I'm just going to put it in that small container. And I'm going to add just the egg white to our mixture. Okay, I'm going to pick up the speed a little bit. Okay? Next, we're going to add some more flour, okay? And this is where doughs really get tricky. A lot of recipes will tell you to add enough flour to make a stiff dough. Well, what does that really mean? Until you've made bread a couple of times, it's hard to just kind of gauge that on your own. It's just something that you have to learn from experience. There's no magical bread fairy that's going to pop out and tell you that your bread's ready. You just kind of have to add the flour very slowly. And on the recipe, it'll give you a range between 4.5, for this recipe in particular, it's between 4.5 and 5.5 cups of flour. So you should be using somewhere in that range, okay? And I'm going to add it very slowly to my dough, okay, being cautious of where the moving instrument is. And some KitchenAids have a really neat piece of plastic that surrounds it that you can add ingredients slowly into it from. This one's a little older. Okay, and I want it to be so stiff that it pulls all the way apart from the edges. Okay, which is going to take a lot more flour to do that. So I'm just going to add this slowly, 1/4 of a cup at a time. You can also scrape it with a spatula. If you need to, but mine's pulling apart pretty well. Okay, after we've incorporated all the flour, we're going to go ahead and knead our dough. So right now we're just mixing it together. That's looking good. Okay, all right, it started to pull away, which